You're listening to the Real Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Cass McCrory, and in this podcast, we highlight women in all kinds of businesses. For yourself, someone else, full-time, part-time, overtime hustle, together we will learn from and with one another. And if we get it right, it'll lift us all. Let's get into it. Friends, I am so excited for you to listen to today's podcast with Terri Trespicio. Terri is, she's everything. She's a branding expert. She's a writer. But most of all, I think she is just a gift with words. And she brings that gift to people from the stage, from their website, and into their lives. And we cover a lot of ground. We talk about the power of raising your hand, how if you're aiming to serve in this moment, you will always go in the right direction. And we talk about the work, and you're going to love this one. Terri, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So happy.
So I know everything. Well, I know a lot.
You do know
about
everything.
where you've been, what you've done, but will you share everybody a little bit about what it is you do and how you got there?
All right. Well, how I say it today will be different than how I said it yesterday or tomorrow, and so that's the fun of it, right? When you work for yourself, you kind of make it up as you go. But the way I describe what I do now is in 3 words. I think it's 4. I'm a writer, speaker, and brand advisor. Because I go, okay, what do I spend my time doing? That's it. And the way I describe what that is, because no one knows what that means, I say a lot of my time is spent helping other people and organizations be able to conceive, articulate, and communicate the value they bring to the world. And it is easier said than done, because when we're very close to what we do, it's incredibly hard to wrap our brains around it because we're so into it. And so as essentially, the word consultant sounds so buttoned up and so not like me, but as someone who comes in, I basically see myself, a friend of mine gave me this image and I really like it. I like to think of myself as the Mary Poppins of branding.
I
like to parachute in, get to know the family real well, create something amazing and powerful with them. And then I just open up the umbrella and shoot on back out of there. And that is what I found. I think as entrepreneurs, it takes a while for us to figure out how we best like to work. And I found that I like to go fast and deep and then move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So that's how I've been doing things for the past little while, over a year and a half. Before that, I worked, in a more more of a project basis. I'm changing how I do things all the time because we're always trying to figure out how we work best. But at the heart of it is the same thing I've been doing since I started any professional work, which is I've always been a writer first. So any way I could make a living with words and language was going to be the right fit for me. And so that means I started I started going to school and, majoring in English and writing and reading as much as I could. Started as a poet, which I knew was not going to be necessarily something that was going to pay the bills. But I did get a master's in poetry, actually, and created a collection of poetry and really loved that. And then I thought, wow, what a luxury. Now it's time to move on to real life. But then what I ended up doing after that was going into work that allowed me to work in confined spaces and make the best use of words, which is essentially what poetry is. So I went on to be a copywriter at a catalog company. I did teach for a little bit, like adjunct faculty, teaching freshmen, and then teaching at the graduate level, teaching editing and content and articles and journalism kind of stuff. And then while I was also working at a magazine. So I went from copywriting and direct mail to working at a consumer magazine called Body and Soul, which later became Whole Living, and spent a big chunk of my career as a magazine editor. And that's where I learned how words are processed, and agreed upon and curated and created to make magazines that sell. And so that's how I jumped along.
I still have some issues of Whole Living magazine.
You do?
I love that magazine.
Oh, I used to keep it all, and then I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Being the Subtraction Project, yeah.
Yes,
I don't use some of my hoarding tendencies, but there's a handful of things. And the other day I walked into a house and I saw the spines of all of the Martha. So Whole Living was a Martha Stewart publication.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you've done some on-air work with Martha too.
Yes, I did. I loved it was an omni media company, and I got to be an omni editor. I got to do the content and was editing and assigning and writing content, but then also was tapped to, host a radio show on the Martha channel because I kept raising my hand. I mean, I kept being like, I'll help with that, even though I had no experience in that. So I got to host a daily radio show for the brand for years, and that was a fantastic experience. And then as they trotted out the magazine in a bigger way, I was brought along with it to, present health and wellness segments on TV on all the shows, like Today Show and GMA, and I've been on the Dr. Oz show a bunch, and so that was really, and on the Martha Stewart Show, of course, really great experience to do that. So then I was like, oh, I love not just the words and the messages, but how do you take it out to all different platforms? So that was my training, and that was my cat. My cat is making noise now. Of course, he doesn't say a word all day. Right now, he decides to speak up. Pipe down over there. Mommy's doing an interview.
That's the real life of it. I want to just underline something that you just said and put it in all caps and then like plaster it on Lexi's bedroom wall. Keep raising your hand.
Yes.
Tell me more about how you developed that skill, or if you did, or if it was just innate, and like how you've seen people do it and not do it.
Well, I've never thought I was, good enough to do anything. I was like, oh, how would I ever get hired at a magazine? I mean, a lot of people wanted that job as an associate editor job. I'd never worked as an assistant editor. I'd never worked as any other editor role. And yet I tried for it and I got it. And I was incredibly intimidated. I spent most of my life intimidated all the time. But as I got there and I learned more, tried to overcome the incredible self-loathing I had and feeling that I could never. I remember I went home and cried. I was 30 years old when I got my first job in magazine publishing. The woman I worked very closely with was a few years younger than me. And I was like, oh, God, she's starting on her career so much earlier. Like, I thought days were over. I was 30. I'm like, it's all over. And I would go, because it was like, what was it, the early 2000s? And I would go home and I would get upset because I was like, she knows more websites than I do. I don't know a lot of websites. Literally, that was what I was hanging my hat on. She is very successful today, but I don't think it's because she knew more websites. Like, that is, of course, not the reason. But when it came to the radio show, I'll say this. They said, who do you know, now that you've been an editor here for, a year and a half or 2 years, who do you know who'd be a good radio host? Think of all the experts you know. And I said, well, the experts actually aren't as good at asking the questions. They're good at being experts. They're like, no, we want an expert. So I made a list of all the people that I thought would be doable, good. And I said, you know what, just put your name at the bottom of the list. So I put my name at the bottom of the list, and they one by one, every one of those people got crossed off the list, and they got to me. Also, I came at bargain basement pricing, AKA free. So they're like, do you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. And I always love to perform, but this was something different. I had not done something like this. And I remember being in a conference room, joining the radio show via an ISDN line with headphones. And I was sitting there, and the producer's in New York, so I don't see anyone. I'm just in this conference room by myself with pages of notes. And she's like, okay, are you ready? And she was really sweet to me. She's like, we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3. And I was just like, I felt like the side of an airplane opened up and I had just fallen out. And I was like, here we go. I'm just falling through the air, literally on the air. And I just started, and it was like Survivor pilot takes over. And you just are like, let's do this. And I did it, and I powered through, and I realized that when I really focus on a thing and aim to serve in that moment, and I knew I was the right person to be there, that the skills would come. And I went on to host for several years after that and got to be really quite good at it, I thought. And it helped me in lots of ways, learning how to interview people in real time and be entertaining and do this. And you know what? Like, what a great skill. It has served me ever since. So another thing to put in your daughter's bedroom would be, you know how I feel about like, oh, just follow your passion, everything falls in place. That is garbage advice. But I would say pay close attention to what tasks and things you enjoy doing. When you enjoy doing those things and you feel flow, when they say you lose track of time, you get caught up in doing it, don't worry now about, well, how am I going to sell this? Who's going to pay for this? When you become very good at a skill and several skills that you lose yourself in, there will be opportunities for that. The opportunities do come when you sharpen a skill. So poetry, like my parents are probably kind of in a mild panic that I was like, oh, great. I just spent a few years studying poetry. What is that going to do? But because I focused on writing and doing the best writing I could do within that art form, I have an incredible affinity for language and placement and precision of words. And I'm not writing poetry every day, but I believe I am the highest paid poet that ever came out of that school because I do use those words and I do use that precision and I do it to serve others who pay very dearly for that. And I think that that comes with apprenticing yourself to a skill that you enjoy doing.
What is bringing you joy and what are you enjoying most about the work you're doing today?
I love that I can, well, let's be honest, like I made this up. No one said, hey, we're looking for someone who can do these things. I never fit those things. I would look at job descriptions and go, it always felt like I was squeezing myself into a suit that didn't fit. For this, I love that I know what I'm good at and have done it now enough. Now I've been on my own outside of any particular employee, situation for, God, over 7 years. But this particular iteration of what I'm doing is still new. And so what I love is that I get to go, as I said, jump right in. And someone asked me the other day, for instance, I was speaking at a financial services event, to independent financial advisors. And I gave a talk there and I have a great time doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do, public speaking. And someone came up to me and said, where do you get your inspiration? And I thought, you know what? That's such a question people ask each other, but I never have a good answer for it. Because I could lie and say, well, I'm really inspired by all the hard work you do in financial services. Ask me if I care personally about financial services. I care not at all. But that doesn't matter because my personal preference there doesn't matter. That's why I don't get when people get caught up in that. Well, I don't have a passion for financial services. Neither do I. But I have a passion for the work. And so when I said, I don't need to be inspired to do my work. I'm inspired in doing the work. So I'm not like, well, Oprah said I could do it, so that's why I do it. That's not why I do it. I do it because I don't care if you're an advisor, a dog walker, an underwater basket weaver. If I'm with you and we're trying to get to the heart of what this thing means, there's nothing more fun for me than that. It doesn't matter what you do or what I think about it. And that is focusing on what we call in my world, the work. Focusing on the work and helping create it and distill it is so exciting that I could do it about anything. And there's tremendous freedom in that and tremendous service because I believe I can help anyone with something to share. So that's my favorite thing. But it is also incredibly draining for an introvert like myself who needs a lot of alone time. So I love that I can go fast and furious and get in deep for a couple of days with someone. And then I get to go home and take a breather. The daily grind thing is not for me. I like high peaks and then deep rest. That is what I need.
It's really interesting because, I've interviewed a number of women now for this podcast, and these women that if you just looked at them from the outside, you would be like, wow, they're go-getters. They're very extroverted. They're ambitious. They're all of these things. And then when we interview, we identify, oh no, they're introverts and they're, we've identified so many rules on what it means to be successful. And
extrovert is not one of them.
Right.
Well,
and I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of women that have just identified themselves as an introvert and have decided that means that they're not on a path of success or
That's
leadership
crazy.
or other things. And it's just not true.
The best example, and I did a bunch of stories about this over time at the magazine, that topic always came up. And the best example, I will never forget, the only thing that sticks in my brain about the difference between extrovert and introvert is that extroverts are solar panels and introverts are rechargeable batteries. So the extroverts get their energy from other people. They must be exposed to get the energy, whereas introverts like myself are drained by that and they need to go recharge. I am an introvert. I can play well with others. I can connect. I love to speak. There's plenty of actors who are introverts. Introvert does not mean shy or somehow incapable of connecting. In fact, introverts have a very high capacity for connection one-on-one. And so what we do is when we're talking to a group, we make it feel like it's one-on-one, and that's the power. So one is not better than the other, but if I'm around an extrovert too long, I get very nervous and tired because they don't seem to need a nap. And I need to go away and have a nap. So that's what scares me about it.
Yeah.
So don't think that you're not going to be successful because you need to recharge. It's just like some people can digest gluten, some people can't. That's the difference. That's about as neutral a difference as is between introvert and extrovert.
That is such a great way to think about it. And I love that visual of the solar panels and the rechargeable batteries. And I think it would be really easy to identify as one or the other. and feel no shame in either option.
There's nothing wrong. And it's a spectrum too. I mean, it's not necessarily a zero sum. I have a friend who's an extrovert. She won't go home. Like, we'll be out and it's like she never wants to go home. And I'm like, I really want to go home. I want to be in bed. I want to be alone. She's just like, come on. She always wants to go to the next party. And I can tell there's a hunger for her to be around others. And it's a little bit scary for her to be alone. And if anything, I feel very lucky to be how I am, because the studies show that introverts fare better over time and into older age, because they're used to keeping their own company. They usually have a very rich inner life, and they are okay if people aren't around, whereas the extrovert may wither without the attention and connection of people all the time. And that's harder to maintain as you get older.
So this podcast is about whole life, right? Because the curtain that I want to pull back is this idea that you can be a real woman in business, but you can't be a whole person at any one time. You know, I can be in business and be very successful, but I can't also be a mom at the same time. I can't be your friend at the same time. I can't be all of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to know a little bit about you outside of work. What does that life look like?
I wish I knew. I'm kidding.
I mean, I can give you clues based on Instagram stories.
Yes, right. Well, I guess for me, you're right. You have to be a whole person every place, but you can't be everything all the time. And I think that my world is a little seamless in that way, where I don't go to a place where I am like you, right? You don't go to a place often where you're this person in this office with these friends and you're with these people. But who I am and who I feel like I am is who I'm in relationship to at that moment. So if I'm talking to you, you're my friend. You're also someone I trust to talk about work things with. But then I have a group of friends where we barely ever talk about work. It's just about guys or just about sex, like literally, like boys dating, whatever. Like we only talk about that for the most part. So it really depends on who I'm with. But what I'm like outside, I don't know. I mean, I'm really tempted to say that I'm kind of the same. I mean, I don't feel that different. How I sound even right now, I mean, you and I talking privately and you and I talking on this podcast is not all that different. I don't, put on a thing or act differently. I think what people would be surprised, there is a show face though. There is a face you show the world. And I think what people don't realize about me is that, number one, that I do, that takes a lot of effort to me to talk to people. That requires a bit of effort. I expend it. I know how to, but I am drained after. That I am, that I've always been very cowed by others' achievements and insecure and unsure about things. Like some of my even closer colleagues say like, but you're not afraid of conflict. I was like, I'm not. I am afraid of having tough conversations with people I love always. I think that people assume I've just got it all together and I'm like super confident everything is great, when I don't feel that way at all. I don't think anyone does. But there's a weird disconnect between what you show to the world and what people make of that. So I don't put on a different me out into the world. I think people misread it as assuming I am a certain way. But I get just as insecure and worried and like, oh God, I don't know, where is my life going, or why can't I get anything done? I think that the self-talk is, and we talk about this, like how we talk to ourselves and what that means. I'm not always very nice to myself. I really try to be, but sometimes the things I hear myself saying are pretty bad, like, why are you so lazy? Why don't you get stuff done? You should be reading more. Why aren't you get out and run? Would you? Like, I am sometimes my own worst enemy. And I think that to think anyone is the illusion.
I think it's really easy to think you're alone in that, because I don't think there's enough people that are being honest about the conflict that does occur.
That we have it all figured out? Who has it figured out?
I think that I think there's a perception, and any person looking into the view of somebody else's life, whether that's a celebrity or a boss or a colleague, there's an assumption that they have it more figured out than I do.
Yes. And I think the moment you reach adulthood and really look adulthood in the face is when you realize that everyone is trying to figure it out, that no one knows, and most people aren't thinking about you half the time that you think they are. And that's the thing too.
So good.
You'll go, oh God, what do they think? Or are they mad at me? No, they're busy. They're really not. Most of the time they are not thinking about you. And I think we write too many stories to ourselves about what it means and interpreting things that aren't there. And so most of the time, I'm surprised if anyone thinks about me at all. And when they do, that's what surprises me.
That is so interesting. Because I think people, yeah, I think you're right. That I think we do assume that people are thinking about us or not thinking about us. Like we have a whole lot of baggage around. Are we important enough to be thought about?
Right.
Or are we not important enough
A
to be thought about?
lot of narrative happening. A lot of narrative that is, I like to try to be economical with words, but narrative, the self-narrative, a lot of wasted words there because it's really not true. So I try to innocent until proven guilty. Like I just assume that no one's thinking about me unless someone tells me, and therefore I shouldn't worry about it. Period. Because it's a waste of energy. That part.
So thinking about where you are right now, did the you that graduated with your MFA, did you think this was the path?
No, I had no idea. No, I had no idea. I said, I don't know. Even when I graduated undergrad from Boston College. I applied for an award and I handed in an hour before it was due. It was like an essay and to apply for a writer's grant. It was the biggest grant they give to a graduating senior. I was like, I have to get my essay in. I got it at the last minute. I won the grant. It was like several $1,000s. I'd never even seen a check that big. It was I'm very embarrassed to not remember the name because it was like the big boost. It was like the Joseph Keller Award or something. I'm really mortified, Cass. I have to find the award.
We'll link it in show notes. So
we'll look it up. But I won the largest cash grant given to a graduating senior for guess what the description was? The person most likely to make a career in writing. If someone is going to hand you a check, pat you on the butt, and go, good luck, we believe you can do this now. I did not apply for a job for a year because I thought, no, I want to be a writer, but there's so many people who are better and they're already doing things and no one wants me. No one's looking for me. And it would be a favor to not apply for any jobs. It would be a favor to the world because there's obviously plenty of other writers out there already. So I temped at an office. I wrote stories on my own on these old Commodore computers or whatever we had and didn't show them to anyone, didn't do anything and hated my life essentially. And then finally said, I'm going to get a job, a full-time. My mom's like, please get a job and meet some people and have friends. Got a job as an assistant, worked in an office, nothing until I decided to go back to grad school. And I was lucky enough to be in a position to do that. But my fear is I wouldn't have gone for it because I tend to be someone who would hang back and go, nah, someone's probably better. I was that person. I still sometimes am. I assume, well, no, probably someone better will do that. I've always thought it, but then I always said, what if we challenge it and just see? Let's just see if you don't come in last anyway. But God, I was the worst. I took all that money and used it on rent so I could live and start my life living. And yet I didn't really jump because I literally thought no one's looking for me. And there are people who spend their whole life right now. No one's really looking for me. Sometimes they stumble across me and they'll hire me, but slowly, you start to realize you fill a need, but you have to be willing to serve that need. But it took me a really long time. I would come home crying from that temp job. I would just call my mother and she would answer the phone and I would just cry. I wouldn't even say anything. She would answer the phone. I would just be sobbing. And what a miserable thing. And she was like, please get a job. And I would come up with reasons why I couldn't take those jobs. I think the 20s were the worst. I think they're the worst. Life has gotten exponentially better every decade away from the 20s for me.
Yeah.
And so when 20-somethings are saying to me, oh, what are my passion? What am I going to do? And this job has to be the most passionate job ever. I'm like, no, they don't. You just have to get a job and follow people who are smart and who you like and who help you, give you opportunities to do things that you're good at. I turned down a job at a media buying company because I had visited once and they were windy roads. And I said, what if it snows? My mom says, you have all-wheel drive. I said, it's too risky. I would just come up with reasons and excuses not to do anything. And that is not who I am now, but it took me a really long time to get here.
Was there a moment or was it a series of things that got you from that point to this one where you do raise your hand?
I think it was one job at a time. I mean, and people have tons of jobs by the time they're in their 40s, right? I had 3 jobs. I mean, that was it. I was here. Each job. And actually at one job, I was boo-hooing that I didn't get the money that I wanted. I was barely making $40,000 a year. I wanted to be promoted. I wanted more money. And I was talking to my boyfriend at the time, who was a little older and more secure in his career. And he said, you have one liability. You like your job too much. And I was like, so why? That should be an asset. He said, it's a liability because they know you won't leave. Unless you leave, you won't get what you want. And I stayed and stayed and stayed until I got laid off. And actually, I'm really glad I stayed. It did great things for me. It helped me get to New York City and all that. But there is a risk when you think if I just wait, it'll come around. And, oh, but I like it too much. Being comfortable places can be a little bit debilitating, because I realize that a lot of guys will be like, nope, moving, and they are able to create more demand. And I waited to see if I'd be worth more. And in my experience now is my belief in people who are in a position to take on or deter clients in business. I say you are not in business the day that you get someone to pay you. You've succeeded in business when you can turn money away. And when I can turn money away, that's how I know I've made it. And I have done that. I've said, nope, not interested. You're too much of a pain to deal with. You're the wrong fit. And, when you think, oh, God, someone paid me, I have to do everything for them. Don't be too grateful. Be grateful, but be willing to turn that away and know that when you're doing the right thing, I hate to say the word in alignment because it means everything and nothing. But when I've taken jobs for money that was like, oh, this is good money though, and I hated my life for 3 months, is not worth it.
It really isn't. And I feel like I've been in this situation a number of times where I've said yes to something because of the money, the accolade, the reference.
This looks good on
whatever.
Me. Yeah.
And I hated it the whole time. And I come to a point where I'm like, I should just say no to this.
It's hard.
And if I don't listen to that voice, if I keep going, I will sabotage the shit out of that.
Yep. It's so hard to say no to anything. I have a hard time saying no to anything. I take on things, I do things, and lately I've just been like, in some ways, pricing people out who are not a fit. Sometimes I'm like, but I should just help. It would be easy for me to do this. No. It doesn't serve anyone. You've taught me that as well. Mm-hmm. That's hard, though, but that's key decision making. To say I'm going to stick by my guns, even if it costs me a few $1,000s here or there. That's nothing to sneeze at, but it's because the right thing will happen. You have to make yourself available to that thing. You have to raise your hand, knock on doors. And now I can do a hell of a job selling myself when before I wouldn't even raise my hand. So it comes with age and practice, or practice and age. I mean, some people are ballsy from the get-go. God bless them, but I was not.
Mm-hmm. I love that is a learned skill, that is something that you can acquire. Even if you don't think that you're equipped to do it today, you can make the steps and raise your hand here and there and get better at it. That's awesome.
You can, and you have to find your kind of go-to mojo. Like for some people, it's happiness, optimism, all that. I find my go-to is anger and irritation. Because if I can get angry about a thing, I derive a lot of strength from that. I'm not saying that's a healthy way to be. But when I can get really angry at something, it makes me take a stance because I was always so shy and so afraid. But anger, righteous anger, gives me sturdying power. So I find that I have all this excess kind of like righteous anger that I just kind of like use however I need to use it, whether to get myself to act, to empower someone else to do something. And I find it fun. I find it fun to be angry sometimes.
I could see that. I could see that in you, and I can also see myself in that as well. Just saying, like, what is the thing that actually gets me motivated to make something from motion into action?
That's what it is. It's the moving to action. Well, for me also, it's humor. When I'm angry, often I can come up with stuff that's funnier. And since I do stand-up comedy on the side, having that ongoing, like, friction and irritation does help create a lot of funny material. So
I wanted to bring that up, actually. So this is a great transition. Tell me about kind of how you got into this idea of stand-up comedy and how you've pursued it and how it's serving you in ways that you didn't anticipate.
Look, stand-up comedy, not for everyone. For some people, it's the worst nightmare on the planet to get up there and do that. I've always loved it. I remember watching David Spade on like the young comedian special, like in the 80s when he was just starting, and my sisters and I would watch it over and over and over again. And I always had an affinity for it, like a lot of people do. And then when I started as an adult doing more speaking and more, like I know how to hold court a little bit, and I would always kind of test things out and see, like, is that funny? People have been saying to me for a long time, like, have you ever done stand up? I was like, no, no, no. And I would tell a story. That's for people like XYZ, and that's not for me. And I had all these reasons why. And finally, I was like, well, why wouldn't I just try it? Because I had been public speaking for years and working in a kind of humor that I know feels stand-up-y. But I was like, you're playing with it over here. Why not really try it? Mind you, this was after I turned 40, though. I mean, like, I didn't even get into it until then. And then I decided to take a class because I met a woman who's a professional woman who does comedy as well. I said, oh, really? You do that too? It's like this weird, dirty secret of a lot of entrepreneurs in the city that they all want to do comedy. And so she said, yeah, you should take this class. So I took a class, I took another class, and just start doing it. I thought I'd sit and listen to a seminar on how to be a a comedian. No, they're like, great, first day of class, prepare some material, and then next week you're getting up and doing it. And you just get up and do it. And then I was like, oh, is that funny? Is this funny? And they start to teach you. Here's the big thing about comedy. I'll tell you this right now. It'll save everyone a lot of trouble and heartache if they think they want to do it and they're not sure. You do not need to be funny to be a comic. You do not need to have a great personality. You do not need to be an extrovert or an amazing, charismatic person. All you need to do is learn how to write a joke. And you can not be, you don't have to sound like anyone else. You have to be Chris Rock. You should never try to be anyone else. All comedy is taking someone down one path and making a sharp left turn, and then going a little bit further and making another sharp left turn. And it's a great teacher taught me that. And I thought, oh, isn't that a relief? He said, not all comedians have what you think of as this star talent. Now, some people who are truly stars, yeah, they're going to get attention. Maybe they have something special. But there's a lot of people who do comedy who aren't funny, and they can make you laugh. Watch a few TED Talks by people who are not comedians. They will also make you laugh. There are things that make people laugh that have nothing to do with your personality at all. And I've studied it enough. I don't do every night. Like, real people who are trying to make a living in comedy are out there every night. They're getting up there, doing 5 minutes, squeezing in, begging, borrowing, stealing for a few minutes on stage. I am not interested in this life. So I am not pursuing it as a full-time thing. I don't know how people live on it. I really don't. But I have found that it's given me some really great chops and skills in public speaking also. People in the comedy club could give a crap what you do for a living. They really don't want to hear about it unless it's funny and you make fun of it. But people in the corporate world like that you do comedy. And when I'm out to dinner with clients or at an event and you're like, oh, you do comedy, tell us about that. So it's actually helped with that more. And corporate public speaking pays a lot more than comedy does. I think if half the comedians could do what I do, they might do it. But yeah, I'm very understanding of my place in the comedy world. And it's very low on the totem pole, but I have studied it and can apply what that is to help regular people punch up and make things funny. I can find the funny. I don't punch up Hollywood screenplays. I help punch up people's keynotes. But I can help people find the humor if they want that effect. If they want to have that effect on the audience, I can help them do that. I can't make you funny. That's crazy, this idea. But I can tell you how to structure material and manage expectations to get a laugh. Because I do it all the time.
You do, and you do it really well, and it feels good to be in an audience with you, which brings me to your 1 million+ viewed TED Talk.
Yeah, almost 5 million. It's crazy.
Tell me about this.
Well, I always wanted to give a TED Talk, always. And I was like, yeah, I bought a book on it. It was not a great book. It's not a good book for me because it was a man who had analyzed all of the TED Talks and was like, 80% of them have this, 60% have this. That's not how I think. And I read it and I was like, I got tired. And I was sitting on a lawn chair in Central Park and I was like, I'm going to learn how to do a TED Talk. And I started reading the book. I was like, I think I want a nap is what I really want more than anything. And I was like, this is going to be, I'm not good enough for this. Again, me bowing out per usual. A few weeks later, someone I don't even know, I've never met, he's a Facebook friend, I don't even know how. He says, our company sponsors and runs the TEDx Kansas City event, and a speaker just dropped out, and the event is next month. Would you be interested in trying out for this spot? And I said, sure. Now, I had a few years to think about ideas I have, things that are contrarian, things I might do a talk on. I had a few in my back pocket because I'm always picking a fight with ideas and being irritated. So I have a whole pocket full of angry. And so I got on a call with this guy who, not my friend on Facebook, this guy who's in charge of the whole thing. And he says, so do you think you have a TED Talk in you? And I said, I think I might have a few. And he was like, really? Let's talk about it. And so we talked about some ideas, and I said, it really bugs me when people say, oh, you should follow your passion. Like, I hate that advice. It's the worst advice. Or that it's fate. Like, oh, fate is way. He was like, that's interesting. And he's a real intellectual. So he was like, why that? Why that? So we took apart the idea a bit, and he goes, why don't you work on an outline and send it to me, and let's talk tomorrow. So I went away and started to write the talk. And I was like, this is the time. Like, you have his attention, write it. So I didn't just write an outline. I started writing the talk. And I got back on a call from the next day. I said, here's what I have. And I told him, he's like, I love it. Now, what about this? What about this? He goes, work on it a little more. Let's talk tomorrow. I talked to that guy for like 4 or 5 days in a row. At the end of it, I said, listen, Mike, do I need a plane ticket? Like, what's happening? I don't know where I am in this process. And he's like, yeah, no, you're in. And he's like, I love how you've treated this as a fait accompli, as in you already have it. I said, what's my option? Act like I don't have it? So by acting and serving as if I were already given that role, I started doing it. And I wasn't acting like it was all mine, but I wrote it as if I were getting on stage the next day, which I was every day for 4 days. And then we talked almost every day after that. For 1 month, I had 1 month to prepare this talk. And the week I gave my TEDx talk was the same week I did my first stand-up set ever. It was the graduation day of the comedy class, and 2 days later was the TED Talk, and I really nearly almost lost my mind. I was like, this is 2 big things for anyone in a year. Why am I doing these the same week? This is crazy. And I don't even know what I'm more afraid of. Like, what's scarier? They're both flippin' terrifying. And I did okay with the stand-up. It was fine. And I did a great job at the TEDx. I was like, great, that was fun. I did that for a couple thousand people. Bye now. And then that was it. It was a few thousand, 100 views, 1,000 views. And all of a sudden it got picked up. And what happens is like it gets sticky. Someone features it on the main page of the TEDx YouTube or whatever. But it didn't just get a spike once. It grew. All of a sudden one day it was like 100,000 views. I go, whoa, what happened? What's happening? And then and the guy who ran the event was like, do you see this? Do you see what's happening? And it was at 500,000. And within that couple months, it was at 1 million views. And I was like, I don't even understand this. And this was a few years ago. Now it's closing in on 5 million. So once you get a lot, you get a lot more because there's a lot of talks on passion. So it gets written up in groups of talks on passion. People see it, blah, blah, blah. So the reason I never mind bringing it up or talking about it is because it's brag worthy in that the message mattered, because I'm no one. Nobody knows who I am. And no one was like, oh, you have to watch Terri's TED Talk because it's her. No one knows me. No one. And now starts to be that people know me because of that talk. So there was like a tipping point of it. People, oh my God, I kid you not, I went on a date with a bartender that I asked out. Like I was basically flirting with him. This is a few summers ago. Went out on a date with him, went out for coffee, and we started talking, and it came up about speaking and whatever. And he goes, oh my God, I saw that talk. And that was crazy because I was like, now I'm going on dates with people who actually know the talk beforehand. So that's nuts. They don't all get that high. There are about 100,000 or more TED Talks, TEDx talks. Right? Yeah. Mine is in the top 100 at this point. The big ones have like 100 million, 50 million, 100 million, but it's creeping up there. And I believe it's because it was an idea delivered well. And that means anyone can do it if they deliver a unique idea well.
And that's part of what you do.
Yes.
Is you help people deliver really well. I do.
Well, as a messaging expert, I help people do it wherever they need it. And sometimes that's websites, copy, and sometimes that's their talk, their big keynote, and often it's a TEDx talk. So I'll do like a day where someone like hires me for the day, and we dig down and find that idea, craft it. I have them do pre-work. I have meet with them again. And so I do this. I have a really good placement rate of having, I don't personally like recommend you to them. Well, sometimes if I think it's a fit for someone I know, but I send you out into the world to pitch those ideas. And I've had several people I've worked with get those TEDx talks. I don't never guarantee that or promise it, but I know what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we do it. Mm-hmm.
This event that you hosted just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Tap to Speak Live.
Mm-hmm.
It changed my life. And I know that people say that.
Cass, are you being nice?
No, I'm not that nice. You know this. I'm not that nice. It changed my life.
Oh my God.
You brought this gateless method to this event. And I know you're a gateless trained teacher and you're hosting, some retreats and some things like this that are coming up. I will butcher what it is, but would
Will you tell me what was the thing that changed your life? I mean, that's really amazing to hear. But like, there's got to be something you can put your finger on that you feel shifted. I'm curious about that.
So we wrote. That was part of what the exercise that we did in Tap to Speak Live is we did some writing. And then the gateless method has you read that writing, and then it is observed by a room of people, a number of people, and the only feedback they provide is positive feedback,
That's
as
right.
if the work is its own thing.
Yes, that's right.
And it shifted everything for me because in my entire life, the only thing I've ever known to do is to receive something and to view it critically in a negative way.
In a productive way is really
yes, because that is how in every email I've written for every corporate client, for every summary statement, for everything, it's always been, well, you could have done these 16 things better. Every paper has been redlined. Every idea has been.
That's how it works. It's how the world works, and this is how we're trained in school.
It is, and I think, and it's not that I don't think that there's value in the editing, but
of course not. That's a separate stage, but we don't pay enough attention to the generation stage.
Yeah, but that's not where things grow.
That's right.
Things don't grow. You don't get better. Nothing improves.
That's a really good point. Nothing grows on the nothing grows in the ER but a tumor.
Right? Like nothing. And I really took a critical look in a good way at all of my interactions. And are those interactions fostering growth? Or are they looking to be critical? And am I bringing my critical self to too many places in my life?
I mean, you want to ask, like, who are we really? I am a judgy bitch. It's true. I'm a judgy, critical. I love to seize on flaws. I'm an editor by training and by trade, and I'm self-loathing to boot. So obviously, like you, I know, and so do people listening to this, that we have been trained to think that we're smarter if we find things wrong. But often the critics, there's a role for criticism, but critics rarely put something of worth into the world. They only take it apart. And if you only perform surgery on the body, how does the body heal and grow? And so that's part of it. But you've exactly said it. And this gateless method, by the way, I did not create it. It is created by a woman named Suzanne Kingsbury, who lives in Guilford, Connecticut, who has a wonderful whole approach to this, which I have learned, experienced many years, and was trained in, so that I could take this method out into the world. And Suzanne's very non-proprietary about it. She's like, just take it. The world needs it. It's going to be what heals the world. And you've just said it. The approach is, and it sounds simple, but it's not easy, is that when you are in generation stage and writing, whatever it is, your email, your TED Talk, coming up with ideas for your new business, whatever, that you only focus on what works. Now you might go, well, that's a lot of fluff. Don't blow sunshine up my hoo-ha. I need to hear what's really wrong so I can be better. But just ask the very smart writers at the Harvard Business Review if they think that kind of feedback works. And the cover story last month was the feedback fallacy. And as I read it, my head almost popped off my shoulders because I was like, they're basically endorsing the gateless method, which is assuming there's one correct way to do everything is what holds people back from excellence. And so what we did in that workshop and what I do on the retreats, the event is really a taste of what the real experience of gateless is. And what it is creating on the spot with other people in the room, writing, because I obviously am a writer and I kind of guide people through content that way, but you don't have to be a writer to do it. But you sit and you write, which is the only physical way to get it out of your head and onto a page, unless you like hieroglyphics, and that is still writing. And so then it's outside of you. The work of gateless is that you get the work outside of you and talk about the work and look at what is working in the work and follow that, and the bad stuff and the unnecessary stuff will fall away. What this does is twofold. One, it focuses on what works, not what doesn't. but also it gets it outside of you so that you're not as easily hurt by what the work needs. You're not tied to it egoically. And that's a big part because the critical mind comes in and worries about my standing. If you criticize this, what does that mean about me? It's an effort to, and there's all ways that we do it. We won't get into it here, but that are meant to externalize and uplift the work. And yes, it works well with novelists and poets. It also works well with business writers and people who don't write at all, entrepreneurs who do or don't write. And proof of that is I just took it into a wealth management firm. And I went gateless on them. They hired me to come out and do their brand messaging. They didn't have any brand messaging except here's what we do. And I went gateless on their butts and I made them write. And these people were wearing suits and they do not write anything. I gave them 5 minutes to write out a scene of what it was like to work there. And then I said, okay, now we're going to have everyone read them. Oh, that's like everyone taking their shoes off. Now it's even playing field because no one's criticizing. They know it's a safe space to share it. And they can share it and feel that positive feeling associated with, you want to know why your group's not innovating? They're afraid to. In this group, waterworks. They started getting very weepy over the very meaningful moments they share at work. This was not to be predicted. I did not expect this to happen, but I got so much wonderful stories and ideas that their brand messaging is one of the best I've ever helped a group create. And it was because of this. So this can go anywhere. In fact, I'm in talks with a major ad agency to bring it in there and help them. Now you think, well, ad agency people are already creative. Okay, they don't really need your help. Oh, they hate themselves and all they do is talk about what doesn't work. They could come up with way, but they only talk about fixing. So boy, could this be, I mean, Suzanne's doing it. She can't do it all over the world. She has a legion of teachers, including myself. There's about 60 of us who are out there starting to take this into different arenas. And honestly, Cass, that's something I'm very excited about, is taking that out in more places. More than I am, saying, writing someone's website copy, which I really am doing that less and less. But this could change the world, and you felt it.
I felt it. And it has shifted my actions in every interaction since.
In your life, not just in writing.
Not just in
writing.
Husband, kid, team, client management.
It makes your life easier when you can rely on the methodology. That was the reason, Suzanne, because I'm a fixer. I want to fix everything and make it. Let me do it. Give me that. Let me do it. That's what I want to say most of the time. Suzanne's like, rely on the method. Stop doing all of this work. Trust that people have it in them if you will allow them to share it. And that's everyone. That's not just creative people, by the way. Every person is creative. It's just so not nurtured. So this is the power of that. And so, I had that big event. I'm looking at the numbers, figuring out if it makes sense to do the event. But what I know I'm going to continue doing are these retreats, which are fewer than 10 people. And you come and you work on whatever it is. I have people coming who are wealth managers, who are marketing people, who have to start speaking. They don't know what to say. I have all kinds of people. Someone's working on a book. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't have to be a talk or a book. You want to work on some kind of messaging, this is going to be the place to do it. And so I'm thrilled to be able to help other. You want to talk about the people, I have this passion of helping other people. I've never felt it so much as when I'm doing this.
Keep doing it, because that is the stuff.
That's
and you,
good.
You uniquely, I think more so than I can imagine many people, have an ability to really help create a container. And you brought really interesting people together so that the stories were very diverse. And it was amazing.
And no one knew what they were getting into, by the way, because
nobody.
They got there, they're like, "What are we doing today?" And I was like, "Guess what you're doing." And they ended up leaving there in love with everyone. So it was great.
Absolutely. No, it was an amazing point of connection. I'm actively looking at Gateless, and I will link to Gateless with Suzanne in the show note here, because I think that there's a lot of there.
Cass, imagine if people brought this safe container where people can actually connect and share their ideas. Imagine if corporations brought that mentality to their work and saved the editing. By the way, Suzanne is the queen of Gateless. She's also an editor that I work with, and she'll cut copy for you. She'll do that. There's that time for that. But imagine what would happen in corporate if people brought this in and could actually help employees feel connected and safe to share their best ideas. It would change everything. Maybe you're going to be a trained instructor sometime.
That's my hope, honestly. I would really love that, because I think that there's a tremendous amount of value there. I think
there really is.
We talk about how we want to have innovative companies and we want to disrupt the norm.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. This is that.
How do you do that scared?
Innovative on demand is not something you do while you're holding tight to your job.
Nope. You cannot think big with your hands if you're clinging on for dear life.
It's a two-handed job.
Yes, it is. It really is.
We've got just a few more minutes, and I want to be respectful of your time. So I've got just a handful of lightning round questions that I ask everybody. What is your go-to jam when you need to up your energy?
Changes every few months. I get obsessed with one song. Recently, it was Kelly Clarkson's Love So Soft. It is so good. And now I like Taylor Swift's Gorgeous. I just shake it up, but I love me some girl pop. Totally.
Love it. What time do you wake up?
7:30, 7:30, 7 on a great day.
What's breakfast look like?
Bulletproof coffee, baby.
Nice.
Coffee, grass-fed butter, collagen powder, and that coconut oily stuff you put in there. That is breakfast.
And you blend it up.
And I put it in my Vitamix, which is basically just a big coffee machine now, and I blend it, and I drink it every day. I've drank it every day for over 3 years. Feels good to me. Mm-hmm.
Nice. What's your favorite ritual?
Ritual, like full moon, soak in a bath with crystals. I don't really do that. But I really enjoy when I need to, well, it kind of mixes up with some of the other question, but is what do I do to bring myself back to my good humor and calm? And there are two things that do that I will consume when that's when I need that. And it's Howard Stern, which I've been listening to for over 20 years, but I find his voice and that group very centering for me. And also the Golden Girls, which I watch on a loop on Hulu, which brings me peace and joy in ways that I don't know what it is. It's become a narcotic, a very safe narcotic for me.
Morning person or night owl?
I've lately discovered that if I get a good night's sleep, like the morning is when I power through. It really is. That's when you get your best work done. What
is the book you've given the most?
That's a good one. I have given Seth Godin's books to people for sure. The This Is Marketing book is fantastic. The book I'm reading now that I would want to give to people, and I want to recommend to you too if you haven't read it, is The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. The Power of Moments. Kate Vandenbosch, my business manager, actually sent me a copy. And I was like, the books that are the good gifts that keep on giving, right? I want to turn around and give it to someone else. Because mastering the power of a moment can change your experience with other people and with clients. And it really, as I was reading it, I kept stopping to take notes and decide to do other things, and I forgot to finish it. That's how you know how good it is, that it gets you actually acting.
That's awesome. I will pick that one up. What can someone do to make you feel appreciated?
I just like to hear from people. Like I love notes and I love texts, and I'm on Marco Polo all the time, talking to people on Voxer. What's balm to my wounds is to feel just connection with like my tribe. Like I just want to hear from them. I mean, I think that's the thing that makes me feel the most love, which is what I also try to do for other people.
Awesome. You do that. I can say that.
I think I do. Good.
Yeah. Awesome. Terri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.